The movies I chose were Service to Men and Something the Lord Made. Both of these movies portray a similar meaning as to African Americans working through school for a medical degree, which during the time of the movie, pretty much both of these movies and even the other ones that were given our option, it was very uncommon during this time. During the times these movies were released, a lot of African Americans were sought to be basically workers for whites in the medical field, as such as janitors or runners, basically being told what to do at all times. Um, Becoming a doctor in general for anyone is a lot of work. Going through school is a lot, and even being a minority at the time makes it even harder, and even more struggles that you go through. Schools that were dedicated to one race at the time were shown to have more graduate rates. Working towards having diverse schools was becoming more common, especially during the time of the movie as well. Most schools were set in their ways on how they run things, how they do things, how they do testing, how they learn. In the first movie, Service to Men, it was mainly an African American university where two white males were accepted to the university. And both, when they got there, when they enrolled for the school, they were having a lot of issues with being accepted, being shown. One was really intelligent, and he made really good grades, and a lot of times people were saying, oh, he's white, he gets grades easy, and they have to work harder. And in the movie, it shows that he actually helps a lot of others in his class study. But mainly the schools were primarily African American, and the rates were really increasing with graduation. Schools that were split races, although numbers were greater in the school, they started getting even more when they were integrated. Most were not looked at as smart. A lot of African Americans were not looked at as having education, which is, to me, crazy. Just because of your race doesn't mean that you're smarter. It really honestly is how hard you work for it, honestly, and that's everybody. And I think Service to Men really showed when you actually work towards something, you could definitely earn it, as long as, one, you work together, you work hard, you study hard. And doctors at the time were mostly seen as white males, which white males at the time were seen as very highly educated. That's why in these movies, a lot of times, that's what ran the hospitals. Physicians were sought to be white males, like I said. As far as African Americans, there were very few, especially in the movies, but they were up and coming and were graduating. Most races, I would say, were basically seen to stay kind of in their own as far as getting a primary care physician or getting help from a doctor. I know definitely in Service to Men, there was a part in the movie where there was an African American and he was injured. He called to get help. White male shows up and he didn't want him to work on him. He wanted a black male. And they got him that, but but I feel as though this is something that shouldn't be seen as that. I feel like if you go to school, you work hard, regardless of your race, you have a graduate degree, you have a doctorate degree, you're a doctor. Yes, people learn differently. Yes, schools teach differently. But I would say you have that background knowledge as any person. Nowadays we have everybody, we have whites, African Americans, Asians, different things like that who are doctors, and it's wonderful. Everybody has so many options, and it's definitely amazing when you see different races and things like that who come together to become doctors. It's amazing the school that they go through for it. I give them props for that. um but at the time, some of the best medical schools were dominantly African American schools. Service to Men, it was known as one of the best schools. They portrayed that in the movie. Although doctors are trained a proper way of medicine, like I said, everybody practices differently. In the movie Something the Lord Made, which was my second movie I watched, it was a white male who was a really high doctor sitting high on the board, and he had a younger black man who worked for him, and they worked together for years. I think it was like 10 or something years, and he was with him through a lot of the stuff he discovered. He was his lab tech, but soon later on in the movie, he started to notice that he was put down as a janitorial service, and the doctors in the hospital really would honestly try and tell him what to do. They would give him demands, and he stood up for himself, and he said, I'm not a janitorial. I am a lab tech. I work under a doctor. And, although that high doctor stood next to him in every step of the way, there was times that a lot of things was brushed off, and he wasn't acknowledged for a lot of the stuff that he helped this doctor with. I mean, he honestly discovered a lot to do with the heart, and it's at the time the doctor really needed him, and he shows how much respect he had for the doctor and how much he loved working with him, and he worked his butt off to get where he was, and he wasn't receiving acknowledgement for anything. The doctor later on was shown that he in fact needed him for his work. There was times he was in surgery and he needed him to be there. Although a person of power, it's great to work under, still having that acknowledgement means the world to anyone, especially for someone who is working hard, especially for, at this time, an African American doctor working extra hard to get where he needs to be looked at as respected at the time. And I feel as though it was definitely something that I was interested in looking in, because it's important to see how things have changed. And yeah, thank you.